Hello everyone, it is Miles at Miles of Color everywhere online today for episode 8 of Behind the Edit. But before we get started, I'd like to announce that I do have some tea. Very poor jokes aside, I'd like to say thank you for 10,000 followers. No, 10,000 subscribers, I guess is what we could say for YouTube. That is crazy. I thought that would take me like a year to get there. Make sure to watch the entire video because at the end, I'm going to be dropping a little Instagram growth hack. Maybe I know a little something that could help you out at the end of this episode. So please stick around and check that out. Today, we're editing this photo of Ali Rubo to this photo. Ali, do you want to say hi? She's my girlfriend and my roommates, and she's on the bed right now. She's busy watching YouTube videos, but hi. And they were roommates. This is one of my favorite photos that I've taken, at least of 2018. I think it actually is like my favorite photo of all time that I've taken so far. Before we get started, please be aware that these tutorials are not tutorials. These are editing walkthroughs where I'm just showing you my process. I'm not giving you a PSD file or anything like that. But if you want to see like what I do to my Photoshop files, this is a great place for you to be. Also, if you don't know photo editing, I do have some beginning courses coming out soon. However, these videos might be a lot for you to take on if you have no idea what you're doing in Photoshop. More videos coming, tutorials, little vlogs, stuff like that. Let's hop into Photoshop. I'm going to show you like the base edit that I did in Lightroom and kind of walk you through what I would do to turn my leaves a little like blue and stuff like that and get tones prepped for Photoshop. So right over here, I'm going to click the Ali Edit preset that I made. Boom. And we already have these little like kind of like turquoise cyan leaves happening right here. So if you guys want like this little preset, let me know. I'll probably make a preset pack eventually. This literally just changed greens basically. Okay, here are my adjustments. Also, can you hear my computer running? Where are you going? All right, so I dropped my highlights about -15, boosted up my shadows. That's just giving us a nice little like evening out of tones here. Boosted up my vibrance +50 because it was a really flat image because it was a super gray sky. I wasn't getting much color from the light. -5 clarity here, that just kind of softens up everything, just like a nice little softness here. And then let's check out the cone curve. Let's check out the cone curve. That's what we call it these days, right? Slight S curve. So I did a little dot up here. I lifted up my highlights and a little dot down here, and I made my shadows do a thing. So just a very light boost. Next is our HSL, and this is where things get a little exciting, a little bit more fun than the previous lighting adjustments. Cool, so basically I just shifted my greens and my aquas. I pulled them all the way right, and that basically is going to start turning them a little on the blue side, start changing my greens to blues. I have a thing where I like to only stick to blue tones on my feed and my photography. It's just my thing. I like doing it. It makes me happy. So when I get green leaves, I'm like, well, those boys gotta go. They gotta be blue. I dropped my red saturation just a little bit, and let's scroll down here. No split toning. We don't split tone here, at least not in the beginning of the image. I didn't do any additional sharpening or anything like that. This was already like a, look at that. It's a tack sharp image. Next, I did a little bit of vignetting just to bring some focus to Ali in the middle of the frame. Also, let me show you guys my crop. I always crop before I edit the full photo, just so I know what it's gonna look like on Instagram. This looks like the crop that I would plan to do here. Yeah, that looks like the crop. And then last, but definitely not least, you guys, if you are not playing with this thing in your Lightroom and or like Camera Raw and or whatever editing program that you use, you have to be messing with calibration if you want to get some funky colors. Here's the before and after of my camera calibration. Typically, I'm doing a lot more with this thing, but I kept it a little light. I pulled my greens hue all the way to the right here. Here, I'll put it in the middle. You can see it's green, pull all the way to the right, we get this nice cyan kind of color. And then my blue primary, I wanted to keep her skin a little orange here. Instead of going more over here, I'd get like a nice pink skin, which is not very, it's not the vibe. And then I saturated my blue primary a little bit just to give it a little color bump. Okay, so let's right click and click edit in Photoshop. Okay, quick little timeout here. I'm going to do a little time lapse of the skin editing that I did for this photo because I actually messed up my PSD and deleted everything before my final skin flattening layer. So let's do a little time lapse here. This is me doing frequency separation. I like to use the lasso tool to mix textures around and soften out skin on my texture high pass layer, and then I go in and use the mixer brush to mix around skin tones and make things kind of blend into itself and kind of soften shadows, soften highlights, and just get like an overall soft look on the face. And then for dodging and burning, I make a duplicate of my high pass layer by clicking Command and J. I bring the opacity down to like 40 to 50%, and then I just use the dodging and burning tools on there to do my dodging and burning touch up. Okay, next, this part was, it was a little rough making this selection. I'm not very good at selections yet. I've been watching a lot of tutorials and trying to get better at them. However, for this video, for this photo, I definitely had a long time ahead of myself trying to make these selections. Okay, so I'm just going to click the backslash button right here so you can see what I have selected, right? So a straight line down Ali's face here, and then I selected the flowers as well, and you'll see why we did that in just a second. So I want to have two tones here. I want to have a nice like blue tone on one side and then an orange tone on the other side. A lot of Instagram artists have done something similar to this with like a fox jumping over a river, and then there's like snow on one side and then a dry field on the other, but I want to do the same environment but like different seasons in the environment. So I switched the color using hue and saturation to get that orange effect, and then here is the inverse. I used a selective coloring layer, and here, check it out. Here are the crazy settings I did to my cyans here. I really wanted to make them a deeper blue instead of being this not blue. I also shifted my blues a little bit here. There's the before and after, and then for the greens, I really went hard here. If I pull over here, you'll see that they're more cyans, and if I pull to the right on magenta, boom, blue AF. And then I also tweaked my yellows a lot, because if I didn't, they would have been this kind of pink color, and it just shows a ton of color fringing down here on the right side. So I pulled all the way over, and now we have a pretty consistent coloring. Next, I think I deepened the orange here with some more selective coloring. Yeah, so I just boosted up that orange, probably adjusting my reds. Yeah, there we go. So I did these adjustments here just to make them a little bit more present. I wanted to go with, like, you guys know me, super vibrant edits. So that was kind of the goal here, obviously. Next is the flower selection. So I want to have these rose petals just falling down the photo around Ali, framing her right here. So I'm going to overlay this little time lapse I did again, making the selection. I used this photo that I found on unsplash.com. I will try to find the link and put it down below. This is the photo that I used for it. And once we got that selection, you can see I used a ton of layers here. So let me just like unmute them and show them to you. Boom, there's one. And I wanted to bring these flowers closer to my screen by making the files layer a bit larger. And then I used Gaussian blur to make them look like they're out of focus because they're closer to the camera, which means they wouldn't be in focus, right? Because she's in focus. I'm like 10 feet away from Ali, so anything closer than 10 feet will not be in focus. Flowers, flowers, flowers. Boom, there's the before and after of the flowers. And then of course they're yellow, doesn't make sense, right? And like we want them to be rose petals. So here, did a little clipping mask of just a red color, and boom, red roses falling from the sky. Beautiful. So there's the before and after of my roses falling, and here is the color split down the middle. So already a lot of work done. This took me like 4 hours. I swear this edit took me forever. Next is a really fun one. I want to also split the tones of her eyes. So let's zoom in here, and I simply just painted orange and then blue on her eyes, and then blended using the color mode up here. So if you go up to blend, do color, you can paint your eyes whatever color you want on whatever image you want. If you got eyeballs, and if you got eyeballs in your photo, paint those guys. It's super fun, it's super creative. My computer's on a run. Do you hear it running so quick? Where are you going? All right, next I believe I made the roses red. Let's check it out. Yes, I did. And I will admit, made them a little too red, like in hindsight, a little too much. I don't like the ones that she's holding so much, but I still love the overall photo. So yeah, progression, right? If you look at it and you would have made changes, that's actually a good thing. That I'm not a huge fan of that one selection that I did, because that means that I'm progressing as an artist, right? That's the point. A little clipping mask here to brighten up them and add some contrast. And then I also felt like her hair was like kind of getting a weird green color going over here, so I did this little addition of brown coloring to the sides of her hair right here. Can you see it? Can you see it? I also did a little adjustment to my reds just to make them a little bit more prevalent here. I wanted her skin tone to start kind of like blending in with the flowers falling around her. I didn't want her a pink, but I wanted her more on the red side than an orange side. So I did that using a hue and saturation layer. And then right here, I actually did dodging and burning using my curves tool. So I made a curves tool. I dropped the shadows right here, and I turned my layer mask inverted. So I clicked Command I on my layer mask here, and then I painted all the shadows that I wanted on these flowers right here. And I did the same thing with my highlights. Actually, I did a double burn, so I did a double burn instead of doing a highlight, which is kind of cool. All right, so there's my rose and hair touch-up. We're already getting somewhere really, really cool. Like, we're almost done. Something that I noticed happening is her lips were kind of losing color and turning it pink instead of being red like her lipstick. So let's zoom in here, and I actually just painted like I did with the eyes. I just painted a color. I painted red, and then I clicked on the blending layer multiply and brought the opacity down to about 22% just to be a more faint, kind of like I'm like dyeing her skin a little bit in post-production just to make it look like she had darker lipstick on, to go with the petals flowing, go with the roses that she's holding. And yes, next, almost last but not least, we're doing a ton of little adjustments here in our exposure and coloring group. So I felt like her eyes were still a little dark, so I made another little adjustment here with my curves tool. I turned it into a layer mask that I was just going to paint on, and here we go. Boom, just painted her eyes. Here is what I painted. You can see it's just that. I didn't paint anything else in the entire photo. This looks scary. She looks like Satan, but that is the selection that I did. Ali just looked over here. She's like, I look like Satan. I wasn't saying bad things, babe. It's only good things.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Also, so around here, I did a lot of, I guess, tone curve adjustments on this whole image, and I burned the bottom down here just to give us a nice framing for Ali, to bring more attention to the center of the photo here, because I felt like it was too prevalent right now. Like, my eyes are kind of distracted by looking at the whole photo. I want to start here at her and then look around at, like, see what's going on. So I felt like burning the bottom of the edges of the photo brought more attention to our subject. Now I did a little bit of a S-curve here just to give us a nice boost in contrast. You can see it. It's just a nice little punchiness to the image. I used the exposure layer to add a little bit more brightness here. Just lifted up my exposure 0.15 and then did that was about it. Also, we have like kind of some eyeshadows going on right here because we're shooting with the sun coming down above us, so it's kind of hard without a reflector to fill in any light on her face. So I lifted up the shadows right here using curves tool. Once again, there's my selection. Just selecting right there just to kind of flatten out the light that we were not given during the shoot, so I had to make it up in post-production. Also, guys, can you believe it? I used color balance for the second time. Episode 8, beautiful. Use color balance just in the shadows here. It's very, very, very slight. I have it blending at color and opacity at 20. Boom, there you go. It's super, super light. Not a big deal here. Also, for everyone watching, I know there's this like very like purpley blue thing going on here. I don't know how I got that looking over the file, but it's not there in the file that I posted on Instagram, so I don't know what happened. Just a little side note. Then of course, as always, could you guess it? We use color lookup, and we use the same one every time here, guys. The same thing. It's called 2-strip, and it's beautiful. I love her. We love her. Blending mode on color as always, and the opacity down to about 39% because look what happens. It's just a little too harsh when we have it any higher. Last but not least, we're going to hop over into Lightroom and finish the adjustments on this photo here. I'm going to show you exactly what I did, because if you notice in the Photoshop file, it was just a little bit too pink in the skin, a little bit too red on the left side. Once I brought it over to my phone, I was like, okay, like I have to make some final adjustments. So I went back into Lightroom, and here's what we did. When you're doing very intense edits like this, you often kind of hop between your phone, hop between your computer. You have to go and take walks on and just take a break and like not look at your screen for a while, because colors start to play a little trick on your mind, as well as like exposure and stuff like that. Okay, so let me walk you through here. Okay, so I boosted up my exposure just a little bit to add some punch, some contrast as well, +7, some highlight bump, some shadow drop. Here's what we got so far, just a nice little contrast. I also lit up her face a little bit here. You can see I drew over her face using this brush, and I dropped the saturation about -18 just to make her look a bit more pale. And then I also desaturated her left eye a little bit because it was a little too blue before we did this. You can see that, a little too blue here. And then I really wanted to emphasize the burning, as in the darkening of the photo down here on the left and right side. So I used some gradients here, and I dropped the exposure down almost, yeah, 1.5 and then 0.6 here, just to add a huge focus on alley. Here's the tone curve. I did just like a little bump in the highlights here, but nothing too drastic. Here's where things turn into orange and teal instead of red and blue in the HSL. So we brought oranges up plus 25. We brought our aquas down at negative 24, boosted our reds just a little bit and our oranges just a little bit, just to add some prevalence to the left side of the photo. I also boosted up the blues and the aquas just to, you know, make this side a little bit more prevalent as well. So here's the before and after of this so far in the Lightroom finalized edit. Here in the effects, I even added a little bit of a vignetting here at negative 12, and here it is, just to really hone in. I just really wanted to just really focus on the center of the photo, I guess. And then that was it, guys. That was the entire editing process. This photo took me like 6 hours, I think, to complete, just because of so much experimenting and figuring out what was going to work out, what wasn't, a lot of failed things as well. So it took me a while to get here. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of Behind the Edit. I forgot to mention the IG growth hack. It's going to sound extremely basic and just stupid. Like, everyone says this advice, and I hate this advice too, but I'm going to give it to you, and it sounds stupid, but be yourself. And by be yourself, I don't mean it in a very cliche way. I mean, the only way I've grown on Instagram is simply by creating art that is very specific to me, things that I love, and that set me apart from my peers, and that helped me kind of create my own little niche where people couldn't find anything similar to what I was doing except for on my page, so they had to click that follow. So find what makes you special, write it down, you know, kind of set yourself apart, really just do whatever you want to do with your Instagram page. Figure out if you like colors, if you like black and whites, if you like action shots, if you like really close-up detailed portraits. Like, just figure out what it is that makes you special and then implement who you are into those photos, and I promise you will be like no one else, and people will just have to click that follow button. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye. Why did I hit the microphone? Why did I hit the mic?